Chapter 16, New Friends. Little Christian waited by the side of Watchful in the porch of the Palace Beautiful, and presently a lady came out to speak to them. Her name was Discretion, and when Christian looked up at her, he thought her face was the sweetest he had ever seen. "Why did you call me?" she asked, and then, seeing little Christian, she put out her hand and laid it gently on his shoulder. "She's like my mother's picture," he thought. "I'm sure I shall love her." Watchful answered his mistress, saying, "This boy is journeying to the Celestial City, and it is too late for him to walk any further tonight, so he would be glad to stay here if you are willing to take him in." Then Discretion asked little Christian many questions. She wished to know from what city he had come and why he had left his house. She also asked him who had directed him into the way of the king, and she made him tell her of all that had happened to him on his journey. "And what is your name?" she said at last. "Christian," he replied. "I shall be very glad if I may stay here until morning." "Yes, you may stay," answered Discretion, smiling at the boy's anxious little face. "Wait, I will call my daughters." She went back into the house and brought out 3 girls. 2 of them were older than Christian. Their names were Piety and Prudence. Charity, the youngest, was just about his own age. "This is one of the king's little pilgrims," said Discretion. "I think we can make room for him in the palace, can we not?" "Oh, yes," said Prudence, and Charity ran up to him and put her hand in his, as Christiana used to do when he was at home. "Come in," said Piety. "We are very glad to see you." A number of people were in the hall of the palace, and they all looked kindly at little Christian as he came in. "Mother takes care of them," says Charity. "We girls look after the little pilgrims." "It is not quite time for supper," said Discretion. "But no doubt Christian is tired. Take him into your own room and let him rest." The 3 girls led the way to a comfortable room where a lamp was burning and casting its cheerful light upon walls which were covered with beautiful pictures. Here Christian sat down, while Piety and Prudence took up their needlework, which they had laid aside when their mother called for them. Charity brought a footstool and seated herself near to Christian. She was a kind-hearted little girl, and loved to spend her time in waiting upon her mother's guests, and in doing all she could to make them happy. "If you are not too tired to talk," said Piety, "we should like to hear about your journey. What made you leave your home?" "I was frightened," answered Christian, "for the strangers who came to our city used to tell us that it would be destroyed." "And how was it that you thought of coming into the way of the king?" "I had read of the Celestial City in my book, and one day Evangelist met me, and he showed me the way to the Wicket Gate." "Did you stay at the house of the interpreter?" "Oh, yes," replied Christian. "He was very kind to me. I saw the picture of the Good Shepherd, and I watched the soldier who fought his way into the palace. I wish I could have stayed there a long time." "And what have you done today?" "First, I passed by the cross, and there I lost my burden, and the Shining Ones brought me these new white clothes. They gave me a message from the king, and one of them set this mark upon my forehead. After that, I found 3 boys sleeping by the wayside. I tried to wake them, but they would not listen to me. Then Formalist and Hypocrisy climbed over the wall, but I think they chose the wrong path when we came to the hill, for I did not see them again." "The hill is hard to climb," said Piety. "Yes, I thought I should never get up. And then, when I saw the lions, I very nearly turned back again, but the keeper called to me and told me they were chained." Then Prudence began to question the little pilgrim. "Do you ever think about your old home?" she asked. "Yes," said Christian, "I often think about it." "Have you sometimes wished to go back again?" "Once or twice, when I've been very tired. But I'm sure the Celestial City is far better than ours, and I know I shall be happy when I get there." "Why shall you be happy?" "I shall see the prince," said little Christian. "It was so cruel of the wicked people to nail him to the cross, and I love him because he died for our sakes. Then my mother is with the king. She went away when I was a baby, but I shall know her because I have seen her picture." "Have you any little sisters?" asked Charity. "No, but Christiana used to play with me. She's kind and gentle." "Why didn't you bring her with you?" asked Charity. "Then you would have had someone to talk to on the way." "She did not believe what the strangers said," replied Christian, "and she has her brothers to take care of." They have no father or mother, and Christiana has to do everything herself. Didn't you talk to her and beg her to come with you? I often told her about the city, but I might not have come myself if Evangelist had not shown me the way. And then I started at once, so that I didn't even say goodbye to Christiana. Perhaps Evangelist will find her, and then she will come and bring her brothers with her. Just at this moment, a bell rang, and the two older girls folded up their work, saying, "That is to tell us that our supper is ready." Little Christian was hungry as well as tired, and he enjoyed the good food which was set before him. Then Discretion herself took him upstairs into a pleasant room with a window looking toward the east, and there the little weary pilgrim slept soundly until he was awakened by the light of the rising sun. Chapter 17. A Happy Day. When the morning came, little Christian supposed that he would have to continue his journey, but as soon as breakfast was over, he heard the gentle voice of Discretion desiring him to come to her. "I think it will do you good to stay with us for a few days," she said. "You have walked a long way since you left home, and it is not well for little pilgrims to travel too quickly at first." "I should like to stay," said Christian, "if I shall not be in the way." "You will not be in the way at all. Taking care of little pilgrims is part of the work which my daughters have to do for the king, and we are always glad to have children staying at the palace. Did my mother stay here? Her name was Peace, and I think she must have come this way when the king sent for her. It was a long time ago. I was quite a little baby when she went away." "We will look in the records for a name. If she stayed here, it will be written down." "I think she was just a little bit like you," said Christian timidly. Discretion bent down and kissed the child, for she saw the tears in his eyes. "You will find her again, little Christian," she whispered. "And do you know that she is often very near you? You cannot see her, but she can see you. The king is very good, and he knows how mothers love their little ones." "I shall see her in the king's city?" "Yes, and then you will never lose her again." "And my father?" said little Christian anxiously. "Will he always be too busy? Or do you think he will someday be able to come too?" "I cannot tell," replied Discretion. "I'm sure the king will not leave off sending messages to him, and perhaps when he knows that you and your mother are so happy, he will wish to be with you, and he will begin his pilgrimage." "He will not be frightened on the way," said Christian, "because he's a man and very brave. I think, perhaps, even mother did not like passing the lions. When my father comes, will you tell him that I stayed here, and that when he gets to the gates of the celestial city, he will be sure to see me watching for him?" "Yes, I will tell him," answered Discretion. "Now, I have many things to do, so Charity shall take you into the library, and you may look in the records for your mother's name." Christian spent a very happy day at the palace. Sometimes Charity was with him, and sometimes Prudence, and sometimes Piety, but they were all kind and gentle, and did everything they could to please their little guest. Christian, like many other boys, loved to read stories and to look at pictures, and he found much to enjoy in the library of the Palace Beautiful. Prudence told him which books to read, and Piety showed him all the pictures. There were many pictures of children, little Moses lying in his cradle of rushes by the waterside, little Samuel lighting the lamps in the house of God, and little Timothy listening to his mother's teaching. "And this is our dear prince himself," said Piety. "You have read in your book how he came down to live among us, and was a little baby in a poor home. Here you see him in the arms of his mother, and the shepherds are kneeling around him." Christian liked this picture, and stood before it for some time, until Charity called him to look at one which was her favorite. It was called The Guardian Angel. A little child was walking along a very narrow path, and close behind him came a beautiful angel with her hands spread out to touch his shoulders on either side. "You see, he cannot fall," said Charity. "The king has sent the angel, and if he slips, she will hold him fast." The time passed so quickly that little Pilgrim was surprised when the evening came. Discretion had been busy all day, but before the lamps were lighted, she came into the library where Christian was reading. He laid down his book, and she drew him into her arms and talked to him in a low, gentle tone, telling him many things about their good king and the prince, his son. "I have never spent such a happy day in all my life," said Christian when he went to bed. "If it were not that I wish so much to live in the king's city, I should like to stay here always." Chapter 18. Little Christian receives his armor. Little Christian spent 3 whole days at the Palace Beautiful. On the second day, discretion allowed him to see the armory. This was a large room in which were stored all kinds of weapons for the use of the king's servants. Here Christian saw long rows of shining helmets, shields, and breastplates of the finest brass, glittering swords, and shoes, which Charity told him could never be worn out. And he noticed that these things were not all intended for grown-up persons. There were helmets which he felt sure were too small even for him, and tiny swords which seemed only fit for children to play with. "Are they toys?" he asked. "No," said Piety. "They are for the little pilgrims." Then Christian could not help thinking how very much he would like to have a sword and shield of his own, and be one of the king's little soldiers. Piety sat down by one of the windows in the armory and told Christian about the wonderful things which some of the king's soldiers had done. The story he liked best was that of a boy named David, who, when he was young, had fought with a great giant and had been able to kill him. "The giant was one of the king's enemies," said Piety, "and he thought he could easily kill little David. He was covered with armor from head to foot, and David wore only a sheep's dress and carried neither sword nor spear." "What did he fight with?" asked Christian. "He had a sling and a stone, and when he threw the stone at the giant, the king helped him, and he aimed so well that he struck the giant on the forehead and killed him." This story comforted little Christian, for if the king had helped David, no doubt he would be ready to help any other little pilgrim who trusted in him. On the third day, Christian said to Prudence, "Is it not time for me to go on my journey?" "Not yet," answered Prudence. "It is misty this morning, and you have not seen the view from the roof of the palace." So little Christian spent another happy day. In the morning, when he opened his window, he found that the mist had all passed away, and as soon as breakfast was over, the 3 girls took him up to the roof. It was flat, so that people could easily walk on it, or even sit there in the pleasant summer weather. Christian looked toward the south, and far away in the distance he could see a long range of beautiful hills with broad green fields and vineyards and shady woods. He could even see the streams sparkling in the sunlight as they flowed down into the quiet valleys. "Oh," he exclaimed, "what a lovely country that must be!" "Yes," said Piety, "that is Emmanuel's land, and the way of the king passes through it. The hills are called the Delectable Hills, and from them you will be able to see the gates of the celestial city." "Will it take me long to get there?" asked Pilgrim. "I do not know," answered Piety. "You are a little pilgrim, and you cannot travel very fast." Just then they heard the voice of Discretion calling. "We must let Christian start in good time," she said, "in order to reach the valley before the sun is hot." "I am ready," began Christian, but Charity interrupted him. "No, he's not ready." "Is he, Mother? We have something more to do for him, have we not?" "Yes," replied Discretion, and she led the way to the armory. Between the palace and the celestial city, the king's enemies are often very troublesome, and even the little pilgrims need to carry weapons. Christian's cheeks glowed with pleasure when he found that he was really to have a suit of armor for his very own, and Discretion and her daughters seemed pleased too. "I like to see you made into a soldier," said Charity, and Christian wished that Christiana could have been there too. "You must take care of your armor," said Discretion, as she chose out a helmet of the right size. "It must always be kept bright and shining." Then Piety brought him a shield, which was just large enough to protect him, and not too heavy for him to carry. Prudence fastened the sword at his side, and Charity fitted on his shoes, and then, when he was completely dressed, Discretion bent down and kissed him as she had done before, saying, "May the blessing of the king go with you, my child, and may you continue his faithful soldier and servant all the days of your life." Little Christian felt too happy to speak, so he just put his arms around Discretion as if she had been his own mother, and she well understood that his heart was full of love and gratitude. "You must thank the king," she said. "It is he who gives you all these things."